welcome back to another episode of the Rumcast. He is Will Hookinga and I am John Gulla, and together we are your co-hosts for this rum podcast journey where we look at all things rum and talk with the people who love and shape it. So lots of good stuff on the program today, but before we get to that, Will, what is going on in your neck of the woods?
I'm good over here. I like that you said on the program today, because program, I feel like it's like a television program. You know, it's very, I don't want to say dated. It feels at least like stately or something, I should say. But anyway.
We're official.
Official, yeah. So normally before we record these intros, I get a little nervous. You know, I want to make sure that I'm keeping things entertaining for the people, that I'm not blathering on too much about things.
We have this burden, Will. I know. I feel
exactly.
it too.
Yeah. We just feel a responsibility, and we don't want to bore people to death. But today, I'm feeling pretty confident and good for two reasons. Number one, I replaced a deadbolt in my house today, which is a nice confidence boost. Yeah. And the funny thing is, it's not even a complicated home repair at all. It's extremely basic, but that tells you a little bit about where I am in my journey as a homeowner. But I replaced the deadbolt, so I'm feeling good. I feel like I can take on the world. I feel like I can do anything. The second thing is, so we discussed on the last episode the Hampden Great House Envy that I had with you getting your hands on that latest release from Hampden. We had just talked all about it with Christelle Harris, our previous guest on that episode from Hampden. Well, as you know, this rum was not available to me in my market here in Tennessee. I have seen nary a Hampden product, nary a product from Velier, which distributes those Hampden rums. Yeah. But out of the blue yesterday, I get a text from my guy, Alex, who runs the Friends of Rum Tennessee Rum Society, which I've mentioned on the podcast before.
Yeah, you guys are doing big things. Yeah.
It is a photo of a lineup of 3 Hampden rums and a couple of Clarens on a shelf in Nashville. And yes, Great House was one of those rums, the latest Great House release. And so literally the first thing I texted was, how many of those Great Houses are left? Because the way the photo was angled, I couldn't see like behind the first box. So it kind of made it seem like there's only one left. As soon as I got the confirmation that there were still Great House bottles available there, I went right to the store. I got it. I got home last night. I dove right into it. I've got a glass of it right here in front of me. I know you had thrown out the idea of us doing a re-rum segment, and I know you have a re-rum to get to, but I was too excited. I had one in mind, and I was like, forget it. I'm going all in on this Great House. I don't even want the taste of another rum in my mouth before I try this for the first time. So I am here prepared to talk about my initial first brush impressions of Great House, compared to the other Hampden releases, which you compared it to the Hampden 46 on the previous episode. That is a bottle that is near and dear to my heart. Yep. It's also a bottle that comes up on this episode today with Ian Burrell, so it's all connected. But I kind of see the Hampden 46 as kind of like that perfect intro to Hampden for people. Maybe even an intro to what people mean when they say funk in Jamaican rums.
Or Hago.
And, and that's something that Ian brings up on the podcast, because I think, depending on what people are into, usually I tell people to start with Appleton. That's kind of my go-to, because as Ian talks about, even though Hampden 46 may be on the milder end of the funk spectrum for people who are really into rum, for someone who's totally new to it, it's like, whoa, what is this? I've never had anything like this. You know, it can be a lot for people to take on. And the Great House, I would say, is up a degree in that. And it's really interesting to compare the two, because I initially love Great House. I also love that rum, as you know. I would say this one, to me, it's younger, it's brighter, it's crisper, it's fruitier. Hampden 46 to me it's a little more like, it's like brooding, like a little more laid back, a little more like a nice hearty stew that you would have. Whereas this is like, I don't, it's like a tropical fruit ceviche or something like that. Like it's like got a little tartness, a little sour here and there, but it's so bright, so much like fruit just exploding off the nose and off the palate initially, and then you get on the finish more of that depth. You get the oak a little bit, not as much as I get with the 46, but I don't know. It's like funk in HD. It's like so bright and crisp
Funk in
to me.
HD. That is great. Yes,
but something that came back to me from Ian. He talks a lot about rum experiences, about different rum experiences. And that's what those two rums are to me. You can tell they're both from the same place, both excellent, but they're different rum experiences. And it's funny because I sent some samples of someone who is totally new to drinking rum, who likes bourbon. And I sent Foursquare Sagacity, Hampden 46, and Holmes Key Guyana, the Port Morant release.
Got it.
And he was messaging me about, initial impressions. And the person I sent it to, we're both big basketball fans. We talk about basketball a lot. And right around the time he was talking about this, there was this viral clip going off on the internet of one of the most vicious dunks of the season, or maybe in the past couple of years. There's this rookie kid, Anthony Edwards, in Minnesota, and he just had this nasty dunk. Like if you just Google Anthony Edwards
posterized,
dunk, it's awesome. You should maybe I'll put the sound of it behind when I edit this into the podcast. But anyway, he's a big Minnesota Timberwolves fan, which is the team Anthony Edwards plays for.
Gotcha.
And so he's telling me his initial impressions of these rums, and he says, I showed my wife the Anthony Edwards dunk right after we tried number 2, which was the Hampden 46.
Okay.
And
so they tried them all on the same night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she said that's what the rum was. A, quote, filthy Anthony Edwards dunk. And so that's the 46. Again, the one that I'm describing as kind of the more tame experience between the two, but that's someone who's new to rum. Okay. So it's even that rum. I think when people say like filthy Anthony Edwards dunk, it's not filthy in the bad sense. It's in that like aggressive, punchy, like, emphatic.
It just gets on you.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other side of the coin with that is, I think a lot of times when we talk about these Jamaican rums and stuff, we talk about like funk or like, filthy, wild, etc. in the good sense of those words. But I think those can also kind of downplay almost the craftsmanship and refinement of these rums, which I totally don't want to do.
Right.
But
you're not saying it's aggressive as much as is authoritative. It's making a statement.
Exactly. Yeah. And also just not that it's just like this wild, loose, crazy thing. Like these are like artisans, like it's craftsmanship, it's refined, it's incredible. But yeah, that was just interesting to me hearing that, and then keeping that in mind as I tried this Great House release and comparing the two. I think people who are into rum and drink a lot of it all the time, they taste the Hampden 46 and they're like, oh, it's like barely funky, it's pretty mild, but it's just interesting to kind of keep that perspective in mind.
Right.
But yeah, those, I'm still reeling a little bit from my Great House experience. I'm really into it. And it's interesting actually, because just between, this is almost like a mini re-rum because just between tasting it last night and tasting it now, perceptions change for me right off the bat already. Like today I'm getting a lot more of the oak rather than, I was almost getting like really like sour candy fruit last night, and that's toned down a lot for me today. It's still there, but it's just interesting. That's kind of why I like to sit with rums a little bit before I like make up my mind completely on it, because it can change so much for me from day to day. But
they do.
Anyway, those are my Hampden Great House thoughts. I would say if this rum is available to you, you should find it. It's great. I am very excited to have it here with me to enjoy over the next few months. And with that in mind, I know you do have a re-rum. You came prepared for the podcast to do what we committed to do, even though I showed up and kind of changing the agenda. I'm excited to hear your re-rum before we get to this interview with Ian Burrell.
Sure. Well, okay, I have one question for you before I start mine, which is, so you said that the Hampden 46 is a filthy Anthony Edwards dunk, right?
Sure.
What would the Great House
that's
be?
Actually, that's what my buddy's wife said.
Gotcha.
Yes.
You're just repeating that.
Yes.
Gotcha. I want to make sure. Okay. And now, in your own thoughts, if Great House was a dunk, what kind of dunk is that?
Ooh, okay. So I would more apply that comparison to Great House. Like, to me, I'm trying to think of a dunk that like isn't just iconic to only NBA nerds.
Well, I was going to say the Michael Jordan, 8-foot, like
the dunk from the free throw line.
Right.
Yeah, that is good because that, that's kind of like that's a filthy move, but it's also like, wow, there's like grace and like athleticism. He's almost like floating in the air,
Exactly.
That's a master of his craft in action.
Right.
I love that we're bringing all this basketball talking, by the way, because we talk about basketball with Ian, who I think many people won't know was a professional basketball player in the UK
right? Yeah.
in his younger days, and we get into that a little bit later in the podcast. But yeah, I'll have to think more on my dunk comparisons, but I love the idea of rums as dunks. That's right up. That's kind of like a perfect Venn diagram of two things that I love coming together.
Awesome. All right, on to my re-rum here for today. So I was thinking about what to re-rum. Obviously, anytime we talk, and you said I prepared, and yes, I did. Thank you very much. And I was thinking about what is it that I want to talk about and what's interesting, because I think the thing about the re-rum for me is that it's going back to something that either you didn't necessarily have the greatest experience with before, or something that you just were interested in, it came up recently, and you're like, I just want to check this out. So I'll start by saying I recently got to try the recent TCRL, the Transcontinental Rum Line Trinidad 2001 release.
Okay.
So that's a really great rum and phenomenal. I tried it actually, AB'd that with a Caroni 2000. Which is also Trinidad rum, and I really thought that was honestly better in every single way. So that was great, and that was part of actually a Florida Rum Society event, so that was really, really awesome, and got to try that one. But that led me to this, which is today's re-rum for me. I'm going to show it to Will on here. It is 10 Cane Rum, which is a Trinidad product that is no longer made.
Yeah, not available anymore. The brand is gone.
It's defunct.
Yes.
It is stopped. I can't think of any other descriptives for it, but
the stills that made that rum aren't even in Trinidad anymore. They're in Puerto Rico now, as we mentioned in our interview with Frank Ward.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to this one that are very interesting to me. It's I'll give it, this brand is a Trinidad rum, or it started life as a Trinidad rum, pot still, 10 months aged only, from fresh pressed cane juice originally.
So this is not the blend, because I know Tin Cane had some releases that were a blend of cane juice and molasses distillate.
Correct. So I was lucky enough that I walked into a local shop here in Miami and saw this bottle on the shelf. I found that dusty, and it turns out that this is one of the original. I had to look and figure out, because there's even two different bottle designs. Like, this is really like 10 Cane is like really a rum riddle, because there's just so much different things that you have to figure out about it if you're interested to do so. There's different bottle designs and shapes. There's different blends, like you talked about, and even at some point there was Barbados rum instead of Trinidad rum.
Really, I didn't know that. Yeah,
so
it's like you had to do like some Google archaeology to figure out what you have on your hands.
It really did, and actually, funny enough, I couldn't find it out online. I was like, I can't tell if this is the blend. I can't tell if this has Barbados in it. It says Trinidad rum on it. But lucky enough, mine came with a hang tag on it. And as the last step before we were recording today, I looked at this little hang tag on it, and it says, created from the first pressing of carefully handled virgin cane, a decadence unachievable with molasses.
Oh, wow. So they're even doing the thing where they kind of like throw shade a little bit at the molasses-based rums.
So my presumption is that this bottle has no molasses blend, and this is 100% fresh pressed cane juice from Trinidad.
I love that they're just like taking shots at molasses, and then just like, within a few years, they're putting that in there too.
Right. It didn't go the way they wanted it.
Yeah, it's marketing for you.
But anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about this rum. First of all, a lot of people call it Iacane. I don't know if you've seen that because of the font.
I've never heard that. That's funny.
So it looks like Iacane rum instead of 10 Cane rum, which I've seen that
choice,
online.
Perhaps.
Bad font choice. All of this may have been, missteps that unfortunately this brand had. But what I will say is it's a really nice rum. It's 40% ABV, so we're not talking about anything super high for rum geeks like us. But even within that 40%, it's really pleasant. The 10 months aging and the color on this is straw color, kind of like Probitas or Veritas.
I love that color in rums.
I do too. I don't think there's enough of it, actually. So one of the things that occurred to me as I was with this rum is that this rum, other than Probitas and Veritas, and I'm sure there's some others out there I'm not thinking of, but there's not a whole lot of very lightly aged rums in the market.
That aren't filtered, you mean?
That aren't filtered, correct.
Yeah.
So I really think this is a special kind of product, and I'm really happy that I was able to find it even after it stopped being made in like 2015. So that it's really nice. It's very light. It's fruity. I don't know that I would really consider this one a super sipper. Wow, that sounded weird, but
super sipper.
It's. I don't know that it's a sipping rum in the sense of like this is what always I'm going to grab when I'm looking to sip, which I do most of. However, I do think it's worthy of sipping, and I do think it's a fun experience to sip. But I do think also it's really a daiquiri rum or much more of like a mixing, mojito or some of that classic drinks that you would think of that are still within my grasp to do because I'm learning. This is a great rum for that.
The first question that comes to mind is because I think when people hear cane juice rums, they instantly go to agricole. And so, as you said, though, this is pot distilled. Right. How does it compare to you to some of the Blanc agricoles that you've had?
So I'm really glad you asked that question because the one thing that sticks out to me here is that there is a lot of difference. And last year on the podcast, we talked about like I had no experience with agricoles really, and we were just getting, I think it was Kiwa's episode, where we talked about that. But I've been lucky to have experienced quite a few agricoles since then, and many of them are either unaged or very lightly aged. And I will say that I'm really enjoying those now. It is a very different classification of rum, obviously, but this one doesn't quite have some of the same hallmarks as the agricoles. It's less grassy and fruity than a lot of the agricoles that I've tasted, and Nissan was one I recently had, which I really enjoyed. This one, for some reason, even though it is fresh pressed cane juiced, I don't know that I would have even been able to tell.
Interesting. So almost like I feel that way sometimes about Barbancourt.
Yes, it's actually much closer to Barbancourt. That's a good comparison.
Which is interesting though, because Barbancourt comes from, a column still, which is also a much different type of column still than is used for the agricole rums. But yeah, it just goes to show kind of you can never judge a rum necessarily by its still.
Yeah, it's a great rum. If there are any bottles left in the world, I do suggest that people do grab them because it's not coming back from what I understand. And it's a really, really nice, fresh pressed cane juice rum that does have different hallmarks and is not quite as tangy or grassy. Still has some sweetness in there, but a really, really phenomenal one that I hope that somebody is able to kind of think about bringing back to market a similar product at some point.
Yeah, well, maybe the next thing we need to do is get our hands on some Ron Pépin, which is the cane juice rum that's being distilled on those stills now, like I mentioned, in Puerto Rico, and see how that compares to that tin cane distillate. But that's great. That's a great find. Very cool. I know there are a lot of people who were big fans of that rum, and I always enjoy when people stumble upon one of those old bottles that's still out there in the wild. I've yet to see one, so I have not had that rum, but very cool. And also on that note, by the way, you were talking about being newer to agricole and warming up to it a little bit, and that's something that Ian Burrell brought up in the interview today. Was just that it was an acquired taste for him. Something at first, he had to kind of warm up to it. So on that note, this was a really, it's almost like, of course, a conversation with Ian Burrell is going to be fun because that's the kind of personality he has.
Exactly.
But this was a really fun conversation, and we got to learn a lot about what he has done over a year now with Equiano, which is the brand that he is a partner in producing, a co-founder of, the first African Caribbean rum, featuring rum from Foursquare in Barbados, featuring rum from Gray's in Mauritius. And hearing the whole backstory of that was really interesting to me, hearing how he first became familiar with rum from Mauritius in the first place, the bigger story behind what they're doing. We also got into the International Sugarcane Spirits Awards, which was great. Yes. A new rum competition, or I should say sugarcane spirits competitions, because they also judge cachaças and things like that. And the results were recently announced. It's different in a lot of ways from typical competitions, and we get into that, as well as like why they made those decisions and everything. And then at the end, we kind of just bounced around the rum world, just like digging into Ian's
just
experience.
like Ian does.
Like, yeah, exactly. Just having him kind of, touch on different parts of the rum universe that maybe don't get as much attention as others and things like that. Learned a little bit more about Ian's own personal story and everything. So it was really fun. I had a blast doing it. I hope people enjoy it as well. Anything to add on that note or to cover before we get into the interview?
No, I think you covered it really, really well. And as you mentioned, Ian Burrell is a fun guy, and he's just such an awesome personality to represent a lot of the rum world. And it was great for me to hear a little bit of insight into his personal journey as well. I think he spends so much time talking a lot about rum and a lot about different things that we mentioned, but there's also the personal side of the story that he tells, which I really appreciated. And so I hope people look forward to that. I like that part quite a bit.
Yeah, excellent. Well, with that said, let's get to it. Also, quick note before we get into the interview, we had just some slight audio issues for the first 8 to 10 minutes or so. Not horrible, but a little bit below our typical standards, but we made some changes and it improves significantly after that mark in the interview. So hang in there and enjoy.
Hey Rumcasters, if you love rum like we do, there are 6 simple but meaningful words that are likely to get your attention. Single barrel, cask strength, no additives. Those 6 words are the whole premise behind the single cask rum releases from Holmes Key, the sponsor for this episode of the Rumcast. Holmes Key seeks out the world's best rums and releases them unadulterated and at cask strength in limited editions. Check out their website at holmeskey.com to learn about current releases distilled at places like Foursquare in Barbados, Demerara Distillers in Guyana, Travelers Liquors in Belize, and South Pacific Distilleries in Fiji. And be sure to look out for new releases of limited editions that are releasing soon in 2021. Find them at Holmes Key, that's HOLMESCAY.com. Now back to the show.
All right, so we are here with Ian Burrell, the Global Rum Ambassador, the man with the coolest title in rum. Actually, I guess we could say in all of spirits, since, it's rum, it's the best spirit. So co-founder of Equiano Rum, co-founder of International Sugarcane Spirits Awards, founder of the UK Rum Fest. I could keep going.
You need a scroll.
I know. What's really on my mind, Ian, is something that John and I found out during another recent interview. It was with some of the folks at St. Lucia Distillers, and we had asked about the Master's Selection Program and the origin of it. And Margaret, the CEO, said, well, actually, it was kind of because of Ian Burrell. He came to pick out a barrel of rum. So you can now add, I think, creator of Master Selection, St. Lucia.
We were like, of course.
Resume.
Of course, it was Ian.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I think that was the first time my name actually appeared on a bottle for Velia's St. Lucia rum. That Luca Gargano had asked me to actually select a couple barrels while I was there. So I was like, wow, I feel honored. Lucas asked me to select a barrel for his Bellier collection. And I was like, yeah, but tasting this, tasting that. I'm like, yeah, taste that. Yeah, that one. Those 2 will do.
That's a nice little errand to get added, onto your trip while you're there.
Exactly, yeah. Made me work while I'm on vacation.
So, Ian, as a Global Rum Ambassador, and you do a lot of traveling and been many places, I imagine a lot of your job pre-COVID did involve mostly going to different places in the world and attending various rum events all over. I know you've put some together yourself. When coronavirus began to start limiting all that travel and cancel some of the in-person events, how did you pivot in your role, and what sort of things have you found yourself doing to stay connected to the community?
That's a great question. It was. I knew that for me to continue doing what I do, which is just sharing stories and sharing the love about rum. I knew, although it's great to actually be traveling around and being in front of a lot of the people you talk to, because there's no rums always taste better when you're drinking it with friends, and also in the tropical environments of where they're made. I knew that the message still had to be told, and we can still virtually travel like we're doing now. And at that particular time, Zoom calls and Google Meets weren't really as abundant in our repertoire as they are now. So I'd do maybe one Skype call maybe every 6 months, one Zoom call every 2 years.
Yeah, I remember like I have used Zoom for a while, and whenever I would try to do a Zoom call with someone prior to the pandemic, I would be like, "Yeah, I use this thing called Zoom. Like, you don't have to download anything and have to explain it." And now it's just like everyone knows.
Yeah, it's just natural. Now it's just part of the conversation. Yeah, Zoom me. Not even call me, just Zoom me. The way I adapted was still being able to reach out to as many people, even more people, but now just doing it in this format and changing the way that you got your message across, because you couldn't actually be there in front of people, but you could still get that message across. You could organize tastings by sending your products in advance to the audience. A lot of Instagram live sessions started appearing, and those were quite easy to do. It's great that they were only limited to like 40 minutes at a time. As such, you can do a couple, 2 or 3 different time zones as well. But so it was almost like the brand, as in the Rum Ambassador, got to speak in front of and speak to more people by not being able to jump on a plane and travel. So that was like a little bit of a silver lining out of the whole of the pandemic, with the fact that message, the Rum Ambassador message, or the rum message, I was still able to get that message across to people, but probably even more so without traveling. So yes, it was just about adapting and evolving.
So I know one thing that's been really big for you recently is the launch of Equiano, which is the brand that you have co-founded with, I know, a team of people. The rum community also know that Richard Seale is involved with it. So, something that got on a lot of people's radars right away. Really unique product, great story. We'll get into the details of the product and everything. But the first question I had, it's the first African Caribbean rum blend. So you have rum from Gray's Distillery in Mauritius, rum from Foursquare Distillery. And the first thing I was wondering about is, how far back does your knowledge and experience with Gray's go? Like, when did Gray's in Mauritius first get on your radar? Not necessarily as like, I'm going to, bottle this one day, but like, what was your just first experience with the distillery like?
My first experience was back in 2008. My accountant and a really good friend of mine, he's Mauritian. And I was in a class, and I used to own this bar restaurant in North London called Cotton's. We had about 300 rums in there. And I regularly do like master classes for bartenders. They'll arrange sessions where they'll come to the bar and I'll do a little session with them. And he walked in one time, and I think I was in a session about Jamaica rums. And in his bag, he had some Mauritian rums in there. And I was like, Mauritius? They don't make rum in Mauritius, do they? He was like, yeah, of course they do, because he's growing up drinking that rum. And I'm like, yeah, it's not as good as our Jamaican rum. Probably the same way as if I was Jamaican going to Mauritius, say, yeah, Jamaica's the best. So I had that Jamaican confidence about our products compared to what I didn't know, which is Mauritian rum. And tried the rum, and I was like, tried a couple of them, and I was like, oh, these are not bad. It's a lot of potential. And
pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it'd be a lot worse than what they would have been back then. And then after a few talks and questions and more samples of rums and getting to know Jurgen, the guy that introduced me to Grey, it was a Green Island rum, another rum called Saint-Aubin, which is a fresh sugarcane juice rum pot distilled from the south of the island, another one called Flamboyant, which is that big tree that they have out in Mauritius, and the brand was named after that, and another one called L'Île de France, which is what France actually called Mauritius, Little France. That's what the French called Mauritius, and that was actually made from Mauritius. And so I tried those, and I was like, wow, decent rums. Not as good as Jamaican rums, but decent rums. As I threw in there. A year later, I was traveling to Mauritius to not only learn about a new category or new style of rum, but also through conversations with some of the distilleries online, on emails, and with Jurgen, we felt that this was, in context to other things I was doing, this was the second year after I'd created Rumfest. And the idea would be to create mini rum festivals around the world. And I said, well, why don't we do a little mini one in Mauritius? And we did a little mini rum festival at my friend's dad's hotel, where we got 3 distilleries together. We got Mauritian Airlines, and we had the Minister of Agriculture come there, do a little presentation. And we just do tastings with guests that were at their hotel, and a few people that were VIPs that were invited for that evening. And I was announced as like the Rum Ambassador. And I was like, wow, Global Ambassador now because I'm here in Mauritius.
Right.
That name works. I might keep that. And it was a case of, just getting people to understand that there were different rums from another part of the world, but also locally, it was trying to get the various distilleries to work together because they'd never even been under the same roof, under the same event. Yes, they all knew each other, but they were seen as rivals. And I explained to them, the only way you guys are going to be stronger is if you guys work together as a country, as opposed to individual brands, because it's going to be hard competing against these Caribbean rums. So my first experience as Grays was in 2008. When I first met them out in Mauritius, they then took me to the distillery and I went through their facilities and I was like, wow, some great aged stock. I saw the potential tasting some of the younger rums that were there. All molasses based. They didn't do any sugarcane juice, although some of the other distilleries in the islands did. And I said, wow, I'd love to see what you guys are going to have like in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, in 4 years' time. So I've been following them ever since 2008 and they've been just getting better and better and better. So it was a no-brainer for me to actually look at them as one of the rums I wanted to work with if I ever decided to create a brand.
So that's the Mauritius side of things.
Yes.
The other side of things, Barbados. So when Richard Seale was on the show, probably like a year ago, and one of the kind of rapid questions we asked him at the end was who his favorite person to share a bottle of rum with is. And he said, you.
Wow.
So
you know what? Someone told me this last night and I was like, really?
No way.
I was in the Global Rum room and they said because they were listening to your cast and they said, yeah, Richard said you were the person that he would like to drink a rum with. But like, my God, was he drinking at that time?
He may have been. We didn't have the cameras on, so I can't confirm, 100% certainty whether he was having a glass or not. But yeah, and so
I feel honored that he would say that.
Yeah, it's great. And so I was, I wanted to. When did your relationship with Richard begin, and how did you get to the point of where you could be involved in business together?
Well, I actually first met Richard the first year I did my Rum Fest. When I created the events, people thought I was crazy, thought I was mad. Rums definitely didn't have a premium sector that of note that anyone that was taken serious. So to create an event that actually just focused on promoting rum, like the whiskey festivals, like the beer festivals, the wine festivals at the time, just was unprecedented. So when the message got back to him in Barbados from his importers that this guy in England calls himself the UK Rum Ambassador is going to organize a rum event, he just thought, yeah, crazy. But at the end of the day, he said, let me come out there, flew out just to support the brands. And that's how we actually met. And even then, it was just like, passing conversation here, conversations there. Richard still felt he was still newish to the game, like 12 years into the business. But his brand, his rums stood out even then. It was mainly the Dawley's collection, and I think it was a couple of years later I organized an event called the Boutique Rum Show, which was for smaller brands like Dawley's to really get recognition against the big brands. And we had our first tasting competition, and Dawley's won the first boutique rum brand that had ever been done, and that really helped put what's called Dawley's and Foursquare on the radar because people started taking notice of the Foursquare rums, and it was just building up relationships there. And then I was asked to be a spokesperson and ambassador for an organization called Worspa.
Yes.
This was back in, let me see, that would have been about 2009, 2010. So my role was to represent all of these rums within the Caribbean region. And I had to know about all of these products. So I had to know about Dawley's, I had to know about Appleton, I had to know about Mount Gay, all of an old grog from Grenada, such English Harbour, Antigua. So learning about Dawley's and Foursquare rums was just great because, again, it wasn't one of the, when I thought of Barbados rum, I thought of Mount Gay and Cockspur. So this was like the new rum. And there was another new rum on the verge of coming out called Nicholas Abbey. And it was while I was in Barbados that's where I really saw the real Richard. Of course, I've gone in there saying Jamaica rum is the best rum in the world. Because there's a rivalry between Barbados and Jamaica.
Just on that note real quick, another little fast question we asked him at the end was, other than Barbados, what country makes the best rum in the world? And he did concede Jamaica. So
yeah. As long as he put Jamaica above Barbados, then that's fine. But so we were in his lab, myself and another spirit guy, Dave Brew, and we were inside, we were inside his lab, and he gave us some samples of some rum, and he said, "How old do you think these are?" And so I took a taste of my one. I thought, interesting. Yeah, I reckon it's about 4, 5 years old. Dave was like, no, it's a little bit older, about maybe 6, 7 years old. He said, nope, about 4 months. I'm like, what? Months? It's like 4 months. And that's, first of all, that's where we learned about tropical aging, of how much the aging really impacts inside a barrel, because of the amount of flavor that his liquid had taken in that short space of time. But then he gave us another rum and said, how do you think that is? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get me again. This is younger. This is about 3 years old. Dave was like, yeah, I agree. Again, this was about 6 months, but it'd been doctored. He'd added he added some sugar in there, and he added a little bit of caramel and some other stuff inside there. And he said, this is, it wasn't six months. Sorry, it was unaged. It was unaged. Oh, wow. But because he had doctored it, he tried to make it look aged. He says, you have to watch out for some of the rums that are out there because they're like this. And again, light bulb moment. It made us look at rums even more with scrutiny. But that's where I then saw Richard Seale, as in, I'm a purist. And when I make rums for the future, it will be a certain way. And amen to Richard, because he's one of the most important people in modern day rum, because of his attitude to what rums should be.
Right. And commitment to like shifting the paradigm in those creative ways that he does it. Yeah.
Massively. Yeah, definitely. That's why after that, I think a couple of years later, I invited him to Tales of the Cocktail to join me on one of my seminars and gave him his debut in front of the American bartender audience. And again, it was that same experiment he did where he had the doctored rum and then an aged rum and asked the crowd which one they liked the most. And half went for one, half went for the doctored, half went for the truly aged rum. And that was the exercise. It was like, listen, half of you have gone for a product that I could create in like 2 minutes after the distillation. So understand what you're drinking, be careful what you pay for. Again, that started the ball rolling about that narrative about different styles of rums.
Wow. When you mentioned starting to work with WERSPA back then. Was that while Frank Ward was the chairman?
Correct. Yeah, Frank Ward was a chairman. Actually, just before Frank, it was a guy named Patrick Mayer who was who looked after Coxburgh. He was part of West Indies, and then it became Frank Ward. So I knew and worked with both of those, and there was a little bit of resistance, funny, not from Frank and not from Patrick, from a few other members, because I've only worked for one brand in my life, and that was Appleton, and they felt when my name was put forward and nominated to be that spokesperson, they said, well, he's an Appleton guy. He's not really going to give us all the fair crack.
Prioritize, Jamaica,
which I found quite strange and a bit contradictory, because you got the president of the company who is the general manager of Coxburgh, and then you got Frank, who is Mount Gay or Mount Gilboa at the time. So you can be impartial as long as it's good quality rum. And again, what I did, and there's one particular, I won't mention the brand, but there's one particular brand and one particular person that was very against me being involved. And I flew to that island and went down to their distillery. They didn't know I was turning up. I turned up at the door, knocked at the door, was like, oh, wow, Ian's here. And I was like, I come to taste your rums. I come to talk about your rums, come to learn about your rums. Next thing you know, I'm doing seminars and masterclasses in that country about their rums to bartenders that knew me. And that's when they realized, this guy is he's a little bit more than just somebody who just calls himself a rum ambassador. This guy loves rum and will put his money where his mouth is. And that's exactly what I did. So, so it was a good couple of years working with them.
So talking a lot about those pre-existing relationships and back to Richard a little bit with the Equiano. So I'm kind of interested to know, which came first? Was it the idea that you had to like blend the African and Barbados rum and then it was about trying to find the right blend? Or was it that you're like, gosh, this is great Mauritius rum, and maybe if we try blending it with some Caribbean rum, then that will work? Which of those two was it? And I'm curious to know how it happened.
Okay, so the idea of creating an African and Caribbean rum came first. Before we knew which country we were going to use and how the blend was going to evolve. So that came first, because my heritage is African Caribbean here in the UK. So I wanted, when the opportunity came to create this brand, it was like, let's create an African Caribbean rum. So once we did that, it was like, right, which part of the Caribbean we're going to use? Because that's good for me. That's the easy part. Now, as a Jamaican, I was like, oh yeah, Jamaica.
That's what we were wondering.
But also
literally had that on there. I'm like, why not Jamaican? Well, how did that happen?
Correct. But then also the business sense came into play. And it was like,
got it.
Okay, Jamaican rums for me are like the Isla whiskies of the rum world.
The single malt.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You like there are certain parts of Jamaica rum like Trelawney. I see Trelawney like Isla, and I see like Appleton like Speyside. Appleton is a bit more is blended, much more accessible, more like a true Jamaican rums to Jamaicans, because Jamaicans don't really drink Trelawney rums as much.
Right.
In fact, they hardly do.
Yeah, we just talked to Christelle Harris last Saturday, and that was one of the areas of conversation. We were talking about like when your family first came into ownership of Hampden. She was like, no one in Jamaica like knows what Hampden is.
Right.
Correct. They don't. Yeah. They don't. But in Europe, they know it. They love it. They use it in blends.
Yep.
And when Jamaica, which has its own internal classification of rums, from like common clean right up to, you got your plumbers, your Wedderburns, you got your light continentals and your heavy continentals. Those heavy and light continentals were pretty much all Trelawney rums were Hampden, some of the Long Ponds, but they were going out to Europe for the continent to be blended in either perfumes or in blends of other rums, even the Schnitt, which is rum Germany, and it's actually a legal spirit out there, 95% local spirit, 5% heavy continental or light continental rums from Jamaica. So when we talk about Jamaican rums, everyone's thinking of the funk and the hooger and the thunder and all that type of stuff. And yes, they are flavorsome. Yes, they're great, especially if you enjoy spirits. But most people that enjoy that are still a minority. I'm looking to try and create a brand where I want everyone to enjoy and everyone to drink it on a regular basis. And of the islands that I know and identify with very close, the island that's producing rums like that at the moment, that people are like, oh, I love all that, is Barbados. Okay. Unfortunately, as a Jamaican. So Barbados was always going to be the Caribbean component of this blend, of this.
Oh, so there's potentially more blends.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah. This is just a start. So Barbados. And then, of course, if it's Barbados, it has to be Richard. I was just hoping that Richard would agree to actually blend his rum with someone else other than Hampden for the Veritas.
Right.
And when I said to him, this is the idea, and he says, yeah, no problem, let's do it. Like, wow, that was easy. That was easy. Wait a minute. If I was Diageo, he'd have kicked me out. He'd say, get out of my office. If I was Pernod Ricard, get out of my office and that. So it was that. And it was then finding the African component. But first of all, that Richard would appreciate and enjoy. And I know Richard likes rums from the Grey Distillery. Their brand is a brand called New Grove. I remember him first trying a cask strength one. We were in Hong Kong at a rum festival in Hong Kong, myself and Richard there. And he had glowing reports for the actual product, and it's rare when Richard gives his seal of approval on other rums that are not Barbados rums. But he saw the potential there and liked it, and so I knew that he would be confident. I would be confident in the liquid coming out of that distillery to use in this initial blend of Equiano. So it was just then finding the right one, and I was playing around in my kitchen with the various different blends, using some Foursquare rums, using some New Groves. Came out with an idea of the profile I wanted. That was an explained and showed to Richard. Bam, he made it in batch. And the Equiano, the original, is history. The rest is history. So that's how it came. The name came after. It came after the actual African Caribbean component of the rum.
Right. And I love like how, you had the idea that's so tied to your own personal heritage. And then you found this story of Olaudah Equiano that just feels like meant to be. How did you come across the story in the first place?
That is, I came across the story when I was younger, learning about being taught about what's called Black history, British Black history. Yeah, it wasn't part of the curriculum in school, but you learn about certain figures, historical figures that either not talked about much or either just forgotten about that happen to be African.
Did you have like here in the States? I know February actually has been Black History Month for a long time. Do you have an equivalent of that in the UK? Is it kind of
October, which is why I did my rum fest in October because it's Black History Month. Yeah. So I purposely did that back in 2007. So yes, we do. Okay. So again, you just said about how things just align. It's like a light bulb moment. The African Caribbean idea of a rum came about, and when we were thinking of names, one name came up who wasn't African, who had worked or gone to the Caribbean, and we were going to pick that name. I can't say the name because we might use it for another brand in the future.
Okay.
So we had that name, a working title. And then Richard listened to it and said, "No, sounds too Latin."
Wait, too Latin for Richard, who's putting all these Italian and different names on his releases.
Exactly.
Good point.
Exactly.
Plenipotenziario.
Yeah, I'm glad you can say it, because I can only say it after a few rums. I think I can say it after a few rums. It's probably wrong, but it sounds good in my ears. So we shelved that idea, but then quickly followed by, it was like a light bulb moment when we were sitting around the table. It was like, "Oh, what about Equiano?" And it was like, wow, one of our partners said, "Equiano? What's Equiano?" And I explained what Lauder Equiano was. An African, enslaved when he was 11, brought to the Caribbean, sent to the States, and came to the UK. And then I said, "Well, wait a minute. He went to Barbados as well." He would have been sold or paraded in Barbados, because that was the point that all the ships came there. And it was like, this is exactly where our rum is. Our rum is Africa, go to the Barbados, and then we're going to sell in America and sell in the UK. It just all fit together.
Yep.
And it was like, wow, we need to really look into this story even more. And definitely we want to tell this story, because, again, people didn't know this story. People don't even know this story in Barbados, let alone in the UK, let alone in the States. So it was an opportunity to retell this story, because that's how I made my name, of telling stories of things that will pass down to me that I can then pass on to other people, and then hopefully they pass on again. So to tell the story of Lauder Equiano, what he did as a freedom fighter, as an abolitionist, as an entrepreneur, it was a great way for us to actually put this in front of people with a bottle of rum.
Yeah.
Because some of the best experiences I've ever had is sitting down with a bottle of rum and just chatting with friends.
Amen to that.
And if Lauder Equiano's name brings people to the table, and they can then have a great conversation, and they can find out the commonality between each other, and help with the way that we think about each other, then I'm definitely signing up for that. And so that was the reason why we wanted to call one of the reasons why we wanted to call Equiano. Plus the fact that as a freedom fighter, as an abolitionist, a person who fought for equality, the 4 founding members, when we were sitting down doing brainstorming about the idea for a brand, one of the things we all agreed on is any brand that we do, we have to find a way of contributing back to society, giving back, or working with people within the industry that help create rum, and also the modern slavery and the anti-slavery movement that we're all passionate about. So again, it just all felt right. Calling the brand what it was, what it is, teaming up with Anti-Slavery International, which is our charity that we work with. So 5% of our profits will go straight to antislavery.com.
Wow.
We're still a new company, so we're not making profits. So for immediate what's called impact, we said $2 and £2 for every bottle sold from our website will go straight to them. And we gave our first check to them in January this year, which was brilliant, to say, here's a couple of £1,000, because we didn't expect to sell as much as what we did, but we didn't. But here's a check, and we're going to monitor and keep tracks of how they're going to be using that, and we're going to be highlighting that and promoting that for what they do. And they're doing a great job. One of the oldest organizations for modern slavery in the world. And if we can help give back to what we've taken away from, if we can help open people's eyes to injustices around the world, just as I said, through the strength of a drink. Hey, that's a balance for me. So everything just set right, just felt right about the brand. And I think that I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in karma. And I do believe in giving out good and coming back. And so far, stuff that's happened to us in the last year, just over a year, with the brand, has been scary. And I think it's just because we've been so positive about what we wanted to do, what we want to do as 4 founders.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear. I think a lot of times when rum enthusiasts, spirits enthusiasts, they start hearing talk of like brand and stuff like that. Yeah. They instantly start like their skepticism meter, BS radar goes off, because there is a lot of bullshit in the spirits industry, as I've heard 100%. You talk about before. But occasionally you find these brands that come along, and you're reminded of like the power that a real authentic brand can have, and the good that it can accomplish. And it's so clear that there was a lot of thought, intentionality behind Equiano and how it represents rum, the bigger purpose behind everything. You've had 10,000-foot view of the industry for many years now. You've worked with lots of different brands. What now having this experience of creating a brand really from scratch that's so much a part of you, what do you wish you saw more and less of from new rum brands being launched?
I think, one of the things I would love to see more of is clarity. Listen, marketed, everything's marketed.
Yeah.
And we know a lot of brands that are just bullshit marketing. We know a lot of brands have great marketing as such, but everything is about marketing, getting people to see your product, understand your products, and then getting liquid on lips. But if you have to bullshit your customers with a lot of crap out there, lie about the premiumization of your product, lie at the fact that your product's not all natural. You've added loads of stuff to it to get to that flavor. Lie on your age of your product just to try and deceive your customers to believe that age means quality. Then you need to be called out. And I wish some of these brands had been called out earlier. Last year, we saw a lot of brands being called out because a lot more people had time to sit down in front of their computers and see stuff like, wow, I missed that. How did I miss that? I didn't realize that was going on. Let me just call these guys out.
All these big companies are like, man, these consumers have too much free time on their hands now.
Correct. That's exactly what it was. People had more free time. So I would have loved to have seen a lot of brands being called out back in earlier. Before they made an impact into the way we see spirits or saw spirits. And that's one of the reasons why rum has has such a bad, because of some of these brands and some of these products that were sold or have been sold that are just detrimental to the category and are not technically rum, but get lumbered into the same category as rum, which means when you have people like the Richard Seales of the world in Barbados, or you have the Joyce Spencers and the Hampdens, the Worthy Parts in Jamaica, and you have all of the rum distilleries in Martinique. I know you guys can't drink much rum from Cuba, but you have some great master blenders or maestro roneros in Cuba making some amazing rums, but again, stifled by what people may see as Spanish or Latin style rums coming out of parts of Central America that are like sugar laden or sweet sherry laden. Now, if you want to do that, it's not a problem, but don't say it's all natural. So they get tarnished and put into that category. So when all these guys are making genuine, authentic, local rums that are trying to get the international market, and they're held down by these products out there, these charlatans out there that are making substandard, inferior products, that really hurts the category. So I'd have loved to, if 10, 15 years ago, some of these brands had been called out for what they're doing, and then we'd be making informed, better decisions today. But we're getting there now. Things are catching up. Things are catching up. People are seeing certain brands for what they are. Certain brands are still getting through the cracks. Certain products are still getting through the cracks, but they'll be called out and be changing. And some of them are policing themselves and do it themselves. I've seen brands that were launched like 2-3 years ago, and I was like, ooh, you wait till someone calls you out on this, and then 2-3 years later, they've increased their alcohol by volume. They've taken out sugars out of their products, or they've taken out additives out of their products. They've relocated their brand to another country and things like that because they've had to really check themselves.
Or at least just putting it on the bottle, what it is. Well, here's what's been done. Yep.
Or even just putting it in the bottle. Right. Amen to that. Because as I said, there's nothing wrong if you want to add stuff to your rums and then market it a certain way. But if it's all there on a label and people know exactly what they're paying for, then it's not a problem there. I drink Coca-Cola. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, do you know what's in Coca-Cola? I know what's in Coca-Cola. It says it on the tin. But an ice cold Coca-Cola with squeeze of lime and maybe a nice rum inside there is a refreshing drink. Yep. It's a refreshing drink. I know it's bad. I know it's bad for me, but at least I know what I'm doing. Right. Coke's not trying to tell me, oh, this is healthy, this is good for you, and it's got all the sugars inside. They're all natural. It's actually come from the barrels that we actually aged our Coke in, which is where the color comes from. That Coca-Cola. By the way, we char the inside of those barrels here down in Atlanta when we're making that. I'm like, so they're not doing all that. They're just saying, hey, drink it. Hey, listen, you want to drink it? We're not even going to take sugar out. We're going to leave the sugar in there. If you want to drink it, go crazy, do that. And I'll continue drinking that with my favorite rum.
So with Equiano, I've heard you talk about this a little bit before, but I wanted to say for our listeners and see if you could talk a little bit. There was an intentionality also behind you doing it at 43% ABV.
Oh, yeah. So the intention was, again, the word premium gets branded around quite a lot in not only in rums, but in many, many different brands. But again, with the whole marketing thing, you want to have that little bit of an edge out there. And most rums that you see, especially in the States, are 40%, 80 proof. Right. In the UK, in Europe, they're 40, but legally they can be 37.5 percent ABV in the European Union. So what we want to do is actually go in straight away at entry level at an ABV that, first of all, people will look at and say, oh, that's a little bit stronger than normal.
A little bump up.
Bump it up. But we also then tried rums that are a little bit stronger as well. And at 45, at 47, again, it may be a little bit aggressive for the general consumer that we're trying to get into our rum. They might be scared off of that. It's a bit too strong for me. We want to try and attract as many new rum drinkers as possible to Equiano. So 43 was the one we stuck with in regards to taste and flavor. On an international perspective, again as well, countries like South Africa, all spirits have to be 43% ABV and higher. So if you decide to do a 40% rum, and they want to go to South Africa, you have to create another blend, create a different blend. So at least, again, we'll be accepted. We can sell our product to any country in the world regards to the minimum ABV. So again, that's in the back of the mind, again, if you're thinking about creating a brand for the future as such. But 43 was a flavor profile that worked for us. It's funny because when I said to Richard I wanted 43, I was expecting him to have some resistance and kick back because Richard is now moving his entry-level rums to about 47. As such, but it's easy to do that when you own the distillery and it's your own brand,
right?
He understood why we want to go at 43 and the markets we're looking to go into. So it was a no-brainer. Just that at 43, we still wanted to deliver as much flavor and taste as possible for someone who's used to drinking 47 or even cask strength, but also for someone who's used to drinking 40. They'll say, oh, a little bit more premium because it's 43. So we wanted to basically tick as many boxes and hit as many pallets as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with several different small craft distillers here in the U.S. yesterday, and us as rum lovers, we'll sit here and drink unaged, overproof rum, and like it's great, we love it. And they were like, a lot of people who come into our tasting rooms, 40% is a lot for them.
Right.
They're not.
We forget that as spirit drinkers.
Right.
40 is a lot for many people, most people, especially when you're used to drinking cask strengths. And one of the things I like to say, and Richard agrees with me on this, is when it comes to something like Equiano, you're going to get comparisons. Richard's doing some great, exceptional cask rums, and they're coming out like at 56, 57, 58, 62 ABVs. And those rums, when you get in your glass, we have two ways of drinking rum in Jamaica. We have nursing it. Nursing it means you nose it, you sip it, you nose it again, let it set down. If you're going cigars, get a cigar, you take a little bit again, and it develops in your glass because the ABV is cask strength or it's quite strong. The second way of drinking it is doctoring it. We say, you doctor it in Jamaica. You just drink it. Now, we want Equiano to be a doctor drink. We want you to doctor it. So you pour a nice, big, healthy glass, big whiskey glass, maybe an ice cube if you want, or whatever way, and you sip it, you chat with your friend, you sip. It's only 43% alcohol when you're used to drinking cask strength and that type of stuff. Still getting the aromas and flavors of great aging, great blending. Before you know it, oh, that's gone. Bring another one.
Yep.
And before you know it, the rum's gone. It's a session rum. You doctor it. So 43 helps you be able to doctor rums, where at cask strength, you're nursing it.
I've never heard someone say session rum. I associate that with beer. A lot of times, a lot of times beers will be put out, 5%, 4.5%, and they'll call it a session. Like it's a session beer. And there are settings, someone who loves cask strength stuff, as someone who likes, higher proof stuff. There are settings though where it's like I just want like a bigger size glass and just like sit back, relax, enjoy this for a while.
Yes.
And I'm there. I love sitting down and enjoying, as I say, nursing a rum. All the different types are out there, whether it's some of the Belliers, whether it's some of the Richard stuff, some of the old stuff as well, which complex flavors that evolve inside your glass. But there are times where it may be early evening and with a bunch of friends, music's blaring, and I just want to drink. I don't want to sip and savor. I want to drink.
Yep. You doctor it.
You want to doctor it. Exactly.
That's right.
You doctor it.
We're going to look for that on the tagline, Equiano, you doctor it.
Yeah, man. And any Jamaican man, if you say it to any Jamaican man or woman, they'll say, wow, yeah, John, you doctor the rum.
That's right. I'm using that term from now on, by the way. I'm not Jamaican, but I like it a lot.
So shifting gears a little bit, another topic we wanted to cover is something that the results were just announced recently, actually, of the first ever International Sugarcane Spirits Awards, which you were a co-founder of. And let people, just to give them kind of an overview, what were you hoping to kind of accomplish with these awards that other spirits competitions might not be?
Okay, I mean, again, with competitions, they are subjected to the judges that you actually have, and also the time frame of when these competitions take place. Every spirit competition I've ever done have happened over 1, 2, possibly 3 days, where you're all inside another country or a small venue. You're partying, you're enjoying yourself in the evening. You come in the morning, and you're not fully prepared to taste and sample 80 different products, sometimes in one day in some events.
I've heard it can be like pretty grueling.
Yeah,
it's very, very grueling. If you're not getting palate fatigue after like the first 6 or 7 products, then you're doing it wrong. So to imagine trying to do 80 in one day.
Wow.
So it's tough. And so those competitions, and again, they're there for a reason. Go back to that whole marketing thing. Brands want to win a trophy, they want a medal, so they can tell the world, we won a gold medal, we've won this, and hopefully it will then get a consumer to buy into their products because of that trophy they've won. So there's a place for these competitions. Some people love them, some people hate them. When the guys in France, which is it's mainly the French guys that actually run the Paris Rum Fest, they approached me and they said, listen, we want to put a competition together. I said, well, we don't actually do a competition in London for the UK Rum Fest. I know you guys in Paris do, but we just don't do it, 1, for time, and 2, again, it's a whole marketing thing and that type of stuff. There's some big ones in the world, International Wine and Spirits, International Spirit Challenge, San Francisco, let them do their thing, and we don't need any more. And they said, yeah, but we should do one that specializes in sugarcane spirits, rums, cachaças, clarins, all of that type of stuff. And I'm like, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to be different from the others. First of all, this sitting down in one room over the course of 1, 2, 3 days, that can't work. The only way you can actually do it is the judges have to do it in their own time. You need to do something like give them a month. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what about if we sent samples to their house and you give them 30 days to sample and taste the rums in their own setting? They can do a couple an hour at home when they're more relaxed. They can do it in the morning when their palates are really ready and receptive to taking these flavors and aromas. And they loved that idea. And that became the base of this competition. The next thing was then to find credible judges. So a list of names was put up, and there were certain names that we wanted to be part of these judging, to be judges. They were approached. They all said, we love the idea of it, especially if they're doing it in their own home. They don't have to travel, which was great for this year, for last year.
Right, and it's interesting because I think a lot of people probably looked at how the competition was done and was like, oh, like because of COVID, they did it this way.
We did it before COVID, before the pandemic.
Right.
We were having meetings in Paris. I remember I was at Whiskey Live, which would have been October 2018. Because I remember I was coming back. I just did the president with was it 18? No, October. Yeah, no, October 2018. I just did the presentation with Luca, where he left me on stage and I wasn't even part of the presentation. He went out to smoke a cigarette and just left me there with 6 Jamaican rums. Like, Ian, you take over. And I was sitting in the front as one of the guests on the presentation. Luca just left me and said, I'm going to smoke a cigarette.
He knew those Jamaican rums were in good hands with you.
Yeah. That sounds like a Luca thing.
Yeah.
It sounds like he would do that.
Definitely. When it comes to having a smoke, doesn't matter where Luca is. So yeah, we've been talking for about a year and a half, nearly 2 years, and then the pandemic thing made it even a no-brainer that the fact that it's going to happen remotely. We created a great piece of software where our partners have created a great piece of software where the judges upload their results, they upload their tasting notes as well, which is then used for the brands to use as part of their own marketing. Now they don't know who the judges are, as in who gave the particular note, but they can use those flavor profiles that are used to describe their product. So they're getting something from that as well. The judges don't all taste the same products, so you'll get maybe 60 different 60 different products,
right?
In your little bottles with a code, and that's it.
Interesting.
So it's completely blind, right?
Completely blind. You get you know your category, so it might be unaged agricoles. So then we know it's going to be from the French colonies. It's going to be fresh sugarcane juice. And we then taste those, upload our scores. We do things like, is it value for money? What price would you sell this for, or would you buy it for? And then once you once you put that information in, it tells you the actual price, and then you say, oh, wow, that's value for money. And then you put, is it value for money? So we give some great feedback to the actual brands as well. And the level of judges are spirit and rum experts that we've identified throughout the world from all 6 continents. We haven't got anyone from Antarctica yet. But
we'll get there.
Your next trip, you can find someone.
I am going there. I've been there already. I'm going there next year.
I might have to move to Antarctica.
There you go. So it's quite comprehensive in that way. It's the first one. There are small flaws inside it, like in any competition, but it's something we're working to. But we just want to try to create the most definitive rum tasting competition out there. So our first year, I think, was fairly successful. Some great brands won awards and were noted. Quite strict as well. So the scores weren't as high as what people were hoping and expecting, because we didn't do the whole thing like, to get a medal or to do this, you have to attain like a 90 or a 95. It was just an aggregate of scores put into the software.
So it's more authentic, right?
Yeah. And pretty much done like the judging at an Olympic ice skating or gymnastic tournaments, where it's like getting rid of the highest, getting rid of the lowest, using the mean aggregate, and then doing the division there. So that was the idea of that. And that's first year, looking to increase and grow upon that for next year. Maybe even get a few more judges in and see where it goes from there. But
that's one of the things we were going to ask, actually. So now that you've kind of completed this first year of the awards, is what were some of the things that you had learned, and how are you thinking about applying them for next year? So you said a few more judges, but are there other things?
A few more judges. I mean, this is still fresh off the table, because I haven't actually sat down with the rest of the partners to actually have all the feedback. Such again, challenges as in myself in London, 3 other partners in Paris, and I think 1 is also in Belgium as well. So we need to sit down and discuss that. But fresh new judges to add on to the judges as well. Then to start to market the results, because one of the things I said is that when we talk about rum competitions, a lot of the competitions I see, the marketing of winning the medals normally is left to the actual companies themselves. You've won a medal, now you go and tell the world about it. And I think it should be down to the competition, especially if you've paid money to enter the competition.
I see.
The competition itself should have a PR team to PR this in all walks life, from trade press to general consumer press. So the everyday man and woman who's just looking to go to a supermarket in the States or in Europe and somewhere like that, if a rum has won an award at the ISS, we should have marketed the local media or the wholesalers or the trade press inside the area, so everyone knows that this has been deemed one of the best rums in the world by these sugarcane spirit experts out there. So again, it shouldn't be down to the brands to promote that. It should be down to the organization. So that's one of the things we're looking to do and grow with that. So we'll see over the next couple of weeks. I've been approached by the PR companies to get some quotes. I haven't got back to them yet, but we've got a PR company here in the UK and another one in Paris as well.
Makes sense.
Well, I mean that seems like a no-brainer to do that, just because it's, if you're getting in there and promoting those awards as well, it's not just good for the competition, it's good for the producers, which makes more producers want to come and get involved.
Correct.
Which then the more producers you have involved, I feel like the more prestige goes to so it's just love it. Yeah, and it was great that the overall winner was from New Grove as well, because I don't think it was I was tasting that, so somebody else was tasting that. Good distillery. What by the way, I meant to ask this earlier, what are the primary markets for New Grove? Because I know it's not something we see over here in the States.
Yeah.
Great question. Mauritius.
Okay. So it's not as much of an export brand then.
It's not much. They've been working on becoming an export brand in certain markets over the last 7-8 years. So they've been trying to get involved in international rum festivals. Again, from what we did back in 2008, what you'll see is the Mauritian government allocating some money and some funds to get the rum companies to work together to create economy for Mauritius. So
Okay.
they'll give them some money. They'll say, okay, we'll pay for a stand at Berlin Bar Convent or UK Rum Fest. And on that stand, you'll have 6 or 7 of new brands on there promoting Mauritian rum as a category. So you pay for yourself to go out there, but we'll pay for the stand, trying to then put their foot out there. And then they open up doors by trying to find importers and distributors. So markets where you'll find Mauritian rums outside Mauritius and the African continent would be Germany, a little bit Italy, Czech Republic, UK, of course, France, definitely France, because the connection between France and that's about it for the big countries. You'll find a small amount of brands in other parts of the world, like in Asia.
Yeah.
You'll see in Singapore and Hong Kong a couple of Mauritian rums have gone there because of the French connection. Singapore has a big. That's not Singapore. Hong Kong has a big French expat there. So. And some of them have gone to Mauritius on holiday, seen some of the rums there, and the demand a little vast for it over there. So, but the big markets for them are UK, Germany, Czech Republic, a touch in Austria, just because of Germany. But yeah, they're the big market. And France, of course, France is the biggest for Mauritius.
Got it. And just one more thing I was interested in with the ISS Awards. Yes. I think it's, whenever I see awards, I'm always fascinated to look, especially ones that focus on rum or focus more on rum. I'm always interested to see how they do the categories. Because
that's a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I know you know, anyone who's into rum knows categories, whether it's just classifying rums as a drinker at home or for bar purposes or for whatever, for awards, it's always a subject of debate. And I looking at your categories, I was like, I can tell they spent a ton of time thinking about this, and I'm sure a lot of energy went into it. So what was the process like of determining the categories, and were there any choices that prompted pushback or criticism from producers or consumers, and how did you manage all that?
Yeah, 100%. I think, one of the things I've always been talking about and talk a lot about with rums is the fact that rums should be initially categorized by the country of origin, because we do that with whiskey, or the place of origin. Could we do that with whiskey? So why don't we do that with rum? How can we compare a Ray and Nephew overproof 63 126 proof rum with a Bacardi Carta Blanca 80 proof Puerto Rican style, aged for a minimum of 1 year, an American oak, where Ray and Nephew is unaged? They are two different white rums.
Makes sense.
And doesn't make sense, but they'll be classified in the same category in 99.9% of all tasting competitions. But you'd never do an Irish whiskey with a Scotch in any competition out there, in a whiskey competition, just like you wouldn't do a bourbon with a Japanese whiskey. But they're both whiskeys. So that was a challenge, to try to find a way to put the rums. And again, it's still flawed, because that'd be another thing we look to change, to try to even get more of a defining definition, whether it's doing things like only pot stills in this category and maybe traditional column stills in another, and then multi-columned in another. But then you have the different regions making their interpretation of that. So rum is, because it's made in so many different countries, there's always going to be a challenge to classify or categorize that in tasting competitions. But I think we also, one of the things we wanted to do was to highlight regions as well, which is why we had like American rums and North American rums, and then parts of the Caribbean as well, because there are similarities in regions to how you make your particular product. And then within regions, you have your semi-regions, just like in, say, Scotland, you have Islay, Town, Speyside, and making slightly different, but similar as such. But then across the
lowland,
sea,
Town,
correct. Exactly. Yeah, but then over across the sea, which is only a couple of miles away down in Ireland, they're doing something completely different, but similar. As well, to create their Irish whiskies. So it's always going to be a challenge. So we did go back and forth, and then the elephant in the room is sugar.
I know you have sweetened rums in some of the category, and I was thinking, I was like, how many different names did they write down? Like, what's the brainstorm
before they got to that?
Like,
there was actually a couple of other. There was a few more sweetened rum categories, and we had to chop it all down. I think it's just one now, because the new European law, which actually comes into play in May this year, has to be adhered to by May, dictates that you can actually have 20 grams of sugar per liter added to it. Now, personally, I think that's too high for rum. I know in cognac you're allowed 16, but 20 grams a litre you're allowed to add into rum. So some companies will say, well, if we've got 19 inside there, we are legally a rum. So why can't we be pit against something that only has zero inside it? Again, 19 grams per litre is a lot when we're talking about flavour and finish and that type of stuff. Now, so we did have sweetened rums to put that in perspective. If we're talking about clarity, and you are confident in your product, and you're confident that the fact that you sweeten your rum because that's part of your DNA or it's part of your heritage or tradition and things like that, then you should be proud of that. And if you are a sweetened rum, which you clearly are, then you should be proud of that and enter your rum accordingly. It's when you decide, and with the last competition, you really want to do this, enter your product that has been sweetened and say it's all natural, because you'll get called out big time. Because
did you have anyone try to do that?
Not that I know of. I don't think anyone. I think they saw the list of the people that were involved, and they said, "No,
we can't try. We can't try these folks."
Because we also offer a service where we will test out your product for you in the labs.
That's funny. I have the same service here. Anybody who's wanting to test their products out, just I'll give you the address. You're good to go.
Yeah, send it to you.
This is a very fancy cutting edge machine called the mouth. I think
that's it. The mouth, the JG mouth, the JG.
What's the JG mouth? You got it. Ian, you actually mentioned something I think is really important, which is you're in providing a sweetened rum category. You're providing a path or a lane for those cultures or heritage rums to compete in.
Correct.
Whereas before, they really didn't have a choice where they would either have to say, okay, we're going to go in under another category, but hope that it's, somehow competitive or that it's missed or how it's viewed is received well. But by providing that category now, you're actually giving a place for it. And that means the other categories don't have to worry about that.
Correct, because and for me, I try to see myself as a diplomatic ambassador for rum. I enjoy a lot of rums, but there's a lot of rums I don't enjoy, and I don't try to drink, and I don't talk about them. I don't talk about them unless they're really bad, and I don't mean bad as in taste, as in bad as in your ethics. The lack of clarity of your product. I will call you out. I abuse my power in that respect and call you out because I don't like your name. I think it's disrespectful. Right. I don't like the way you create your products. I don't know the way you treat your staff. From cane to cup or from grass to glass. I will stand up. I will stand up against you in that respect. But if you're just a bad tasting product, I'm just not going to drink you. I'm just not going to talk about you. But I never. Yes, I am a champion for purity in rum, but I'm also a champion for rum experiences. And some people's rum experiences is a beautiful tasting liquid that's been aged and has been rounded off. The flavor's been rounded off with a bit of sweetener, either sugar or wine or whatever. Mm-hmm. And who am I to say to someone who's been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years that what they're doing is wrong, especially when it's in their country? No, that's why I want to define your rum as your style of rum. Because if I go to someone comes to me and they said, Ian, I've got this beautiful tasting Guyanese rum for you to try. I know there's one distillery in Guyana. Mm-hmm. I know a majority of their rum that comes out has been sweetened as in some way or another. But I'm first of all making references to some of the rums I've tried that I've enjoyed, like El Dorado 15. Love El Dorado 15. I know there's like 42 grams of sugar inside there. Mm-hmm. I know that as such. So for me, it's slightly different. I will drink that and sip it and enjoy it. And years ago, when I was trying to create my own different definitions of rums, I used to call rums like El Dorado, like Diplomatico, Reserva Exclusiva, dessert rums. I called dessert rums because at the end of a meal, if I was offering it to my customer to create a rum experience, I'd say, listen, do you want a nice sweet rum to sip at the end of your meal? Oh, yeah, because they were port drinkers or whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. I'll give them that. And they're like, oh, man, this is mad. How's it taste so sweet? Oh, yeah, well, this one here was they age their sugars and blend it back in. This one here, they add some sweeter wines and blend that in there. And so that's how they create that particular flavor. Just in case you're comparing it with something that hasn't got anything like an Appleton, like a Jamaica rum that doesn't have, that is what I see as natural sweetness. So I'd give them the information. And it's for them to make that informed opinion, whether they like it or not. But I'm not going to say to them, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be making it the Jamaican way. Right. Because Jamaica makes their rum different from Cuba, which makes their rum different from Puerto Rico, which makes it different from Barbados, different from St. Lucia. So as long as we can get that difference across to people, and it's not going to be easy, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And if anyone who says, well, that's too much work, find 100 whiskey drinkers, put them in a room, and then say to them, explain to me what single malt Scotch whiskey means. And more than half of them will not be able to tell you. Or it means quality. So they won't even know the rules of Scotland. Yeah. They'll just know it means quality. Ask them what it takes to be a Kentucky bourbon. They're like, Kentucky? Oh, what else? What else? Yeah. They won't know about the corn ratio. They won't know about if it's a rye or a rye. They just know it means quality, because there are rules and regulations in that particular area, and they're consistent drinking that. And that's how I want people to look at when they look at rum. Mm-hmm. Tell me about Jamaica rum. From Jamaica? Yeah, what else? Well, the ones I like are really funky, and it's Trelawney, and so it's Hampden, it's Long Pond. And yeah, great, cool. That's your Jamaican rum. But if I go to Croatia, and I'm using Croatia for an example because I saw this out there, and I see a bottle of Jamaica rum that has got loads of sugar added to it, and you drink that, it's a rum liqueur, then that's not Jamaica rum. That's a product that's used and abusing the word Jamaica, and there was sugar added to that. And I want the customer to know that when they drink that, that's not Jamaica rum. Yeah, that rum over there is. So that's where it needs to go, and that's what we're looking to do when we define and create different styles, create terminologies for different styles according to where the rum is made. The more GIs, the more appellations, the more PDOs connected to rum that is appreciated and understood by learned customers. Because as I said at the start, not everyone's going to know, but there's enough people to learn and understand and know this, that they pass that down to the people they know, the better it is for the rum industry.
I think that's a great point with whiskey, and how it's not necessarily that whiskey connoisseurs know all the rules, but they at least have knowledge that there are frameworks in place that are trusted, and that they know countries are respecting these rules for each other and enforcing them, not universally, but in a way that's more reliable with rum. And I think that's the big thing, is going to be once more of these frameworks are established, agreed upon, then it's getting different countries to respect each other's rules. I think right now here in the U.S., like cachaça is maybe the only cane spirit that is, is distinguished in the TTB regulations. So, it's
because if you look at any of the other spirits, you look at whiskey and you look at the definitions of what the TTB defines as whiskey. It's that long, and then each of them are like definition of Scotch whiskey. See Scotland. Definition of cognac. See France, or see the cognac region. They will refer to Irish whiskey. They refer to the place of origin where it was. Rum, it's like, cane spirit, 86%. It's just that. That's it, molasses. In fact, it just says molasses, because then you have a couple companies, I know from Denver, that try to do sugar beet molasses or try to use sorghum molasses to make their products, because they thought they could get away with it, because the definitions of what the raw material for rum was, or defined by the TTB as a straightforward to actually say sugar cane molasses. So rum is truly disrespected by a lot of... the
exact word that was coming to mind for me as well. It's just disrespectful.
It's just disrespected because it comes from tropical developing areas. Trade agreements are an important part in the EU. Yes, Scotch whiskey is protected because Scotland's a powerful country within not in the Equiano European Union now, because we got Brexit, but Scotland is a powerful nation when it comes to the economy. So Scotch whiskey is protected, Irish whiskey is protected. And when we're trading with our partners across the seas, American whiskey is protected in the EU, because they have agreements to protect Scotch whiskey and Irish whiskey and French cognac and things like that. But with poor little tiny Barbados, or poor little tiny Jamaica, or poor little tiny Trinidad or St. Lucia, they're not afforded that luxury of having that might to actually come to the European Union and say, excuse me, that product over there that says Jamaica is not actually from Jamaica, has never even seen Jamaica in its life. That product that says Barbados in here, actually, it was made in Barbados, but that was like 20 years ago. Now they've added stuff to it, and it's been aging in Kathmandu for 20 years, and they're still using Barbados on there. We want to protect our geographical, our geography. We want to have that to basically secure our future for our products.
And Europe will say, well, what's in it for us?
Right.
Exactly. Europe wants to know what's in it for us. And you mentioned cachaça because that's pretty much how cachaça got its established. How it was established in there. American whiskey was threatened in Brazil, and they drink a lot of American whiskey. And American whiskey companies are like, "Ooh, you're not messing with our American whiskey. Give them their classification.
Let's make a trade. Let's make a trade.
Let's make a trade. Let's make a trade." And I know some people that are on that trade agreement on that board.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, Ian, shifting a little bit to the breadth of all of your experience and all the things we've already talked about and your diplomatic global rum ambassador mindset, we wanted to ask which rum distillery isn't receiving enough credit or attention right now for the great rum that they're making?
Credit from who? From the general public, or just
from the general public? Like, so for us,
or maybe even just a place that you think should be getting a little more shine for what they're making.
Yeah.
If we're talking about in the Caribbean, I was going to cheekily say Foursquare because because they should be a lot bigger than what they are. They get it there, the Pappy Van Winkle. I would say, I mean, from the island dear to my heart, Jamaica, of course. I think Hampden, some of the liquid that's now coming out, some of the things they're doing now, is going to be legendary. And they've had a bad rap because they were just a company that was just making bulk liquid just to sell a certain style of spirit that encompasses what people believe Jamaica to be. And I have to give credit to Luca Gargano because his foresight in the rum industry, that's why I call him the godfather of rum, to do something and work with distilleries like Hampden to create what I see as one of the best tasting rums on the planet, and that's his the Hampden Estate rum that he's put out.
That rum.
It's so good. That is beautiful. And a good what's called 92 proof as well, because the 75 one is powerful, but I drink that in a different way. But it's just not, and that's the thing. It's when people smell and taste that, they say, "Oh, that's Jamaica funk," but that's not even close to some of the funky stuff that I see, say, people in Europe drinking LROKs,
DOKs, straight up,
That is like straight out funky. This is mild in comparison, but still a lot funkier than, say, an Appleton or even some of the Worthy Parks and definitely the Monimus that are out there. So, but yeah, beautiful tasting rum. So I think distilleries like Hampden, Worthy Park, I mentioned them as well. One of the rums that I always say is probably one of the most underrated rums, and the distillery is about to do some great stuff, is the English Harbour Distillery. Antigua. Antigua. Yeah. And they've just got a little tiny pot still as well. So I'm interested to try some of their new stuff they're putting out. But I think I've always believed their rums are underrated, but more importantly, underrepresented. Right. I think they could be doing some really good numbers, big numbers, if they work with the right partners around the world to get more people to try.
I don't see English Harbor. I mean, Nashville's not exactly a booming rum market, but I've never seen any English Harbor here.
Yeah, and it's such a shame. Some great stuff. St. Lucia Distillers as well. They have the ability to make an array of amazing.
Was
rum.
The exact word we used when we talked to them. They have an array of rums.
They do. They got some great stills over there, great blenders, great distillers, a great company behind them as well, a good French company. But yeah, so St. Lucia Distillers, good stuff. And if we're talking about thinking of French companies, I just think, personally, some of the rums coming out of Guadeloupe, again, and Martinique, but definitely Guadeloupe, underrated, a lot of potential. Reminique and Damaso do what they do, and then you've got a Marie Galante, you've got Pierre Labatt, you've got Biel, you've got Biel as well. And I acquired my taste for agricole rums because I was growing up drinking Jamaican rums. So it's something you acquire, but when you get a beautifully tasted young rum with all that fresh sugar cane juice and those nuances, and then you get some of the aged stuff where it just different complexity, say from a molasses-based rum, it's just a different rum experience and a great rum experience. And that's what I like about rums. Everyone has if you drink spirits, there is a rum experience for you, whether it's sweetened, whether it's unsweetened, whether it's an agricole, whether it's sugarcane juice, whether it's molasses, whether it's Puerto Rican, because I love what Don Q are doing. Some of the stuff there, just easy, light drinking, just absolutely amazing. And that's epitome of Puerto Rican rum. I was fortunate, unfortunately, because you guys are the States, I tried a new Cuban rum
I know.
Yesterday. Called Emiente, 7-year-old Cuban style. And with Cuban style, because Cuba has some of the strictest rules in making rum. They actually have rules to interpret the rules. And it's all made by, and all these rules are enforced and run by women out there as well. I was in the laboratory. Yeah, I was in the laboratory with them a year and a half ago in Cuba, and they actually have special lights to make sure it's special glassware to analyze all the rums. And when they make their rums out there, they create what they call bases. So they'll distill aguardiente, so heavier rum from a single column still, redistillado, so rums have been redistilled, and they blend those together. Or you can age them separately, depending on who's making their products. And they age them separately, blend them to create a profile, and that becomes a base. And then you age that base for the minute amount of years you want to create your rum. Yeah. So you might have a rum that has 4 bases, but it might be a component. The 4 bases might be a component of like 15 different rums. And you might have rums in those bases that have been aged up to 4, 5, 6, 7 years. Some might have fresh aguardiente and they're all fresh redistillado.
It's really complex.
They create different bases, very complex. But this rum was so easy to drink, light, subtle.
You can see the look on John's face right now. We gotta open up the Cuba relationship again.
Yeah, I mean, it kills me. My wife's 100% Cuban, but born and raised in Miami here, and it kills me because she has really no connection to that Cuban rum heritage because we don't get it here, and for the majority of our lifetimes, we really can't. I mean, there was a few years there, and so I've been finagled, got a little bit, but it should just here in Miami, it should here in Miami be such a bigger thing in that relationship between Cuba. I mean, we're so close, and yet we're so far.
I know.
So, all right, that's my rant over. But
that's your rant over. Well, it got a little bit more distant 4 years ago. In the last 4 years, it was getting a bit.
It was trending up, and then so we'll see what happens.
Let's hope we're moving back in the right direction with it. Yeah,
I flew to Cuba from Miami like about 5 years ago. I was like, I just did it just because I'm like, hey, I can fly to Cuba from Miami.
I can do that?
I did that. They charged me a fortune at the airport just to get the visa. But hey, that was American Airlines. Yeah. But sometimes great Cuban rums, a couple of new joint ventures as well with Cuban governments and the big companies. So Diageo have a joint venture now, so they'll be releasing and doing some great Santiago de Cuba. This new joint venture with Moët Hennessy, with Emiente. Then you have, of course, Puerto Rico with Havana Club. Another company, ex-Diageo employees, doing some stuff. So they have a rum called La Progresiva, which was based on a rum which was the first premium rum that was given to dignitaries that came to Cuba in the early 60s. That was called Ron Vieja. Which is named after Ernest Hemingway's house. So these guys have revamped up the Vieja. You can still get Vieja in Cuba, but for the international market, they call it Progresiva. And there's a 13 and I think a 20. But beautiful tasting, light, medium-bodied, all dry finish, which I love about Cuban rums. It's dry finish because then you just want another taste. And so you get initial sweetness and then dried off as well, because they don't add sugar to their product, to their rums. But again, another style of rum that I love to have sitting by Jamaica, Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, as such, just to show the variants and the different styles that rums can offer as a category.
This is what I love about rum, by the way, where we can ask, what's kind of a rum that deserves a little more attention right now, and it's like 15 names
all over the place.
No, I love that. That's what's so great about it.
That's just the ones in the Americas. But talking about Asia,
exactly.
Mauritius, have got Chamarel, which is absolutely beautiful on the island of Mauritius, and there's New Grove stuff as well. The New Grove that just won the Main Award. Beautiful stuff. And then out in other parts of Asia, you've got small little distilleries in Phuket. There's a banger, Chalon Bay in Phuket, that's doing some great rums. In Australia, got some
John and I just tried a blend from Thailand recently, and it's surprised the heck out of us.
Wow, it's quite good.
Yeah. And it was a blend from Sheer. They couldn't tell us. They couldn't tell us what distillery it was from. But I was just
they keep their secrets.
I never would have guessed it was a Thailand rum. But
there's loads of sugarcane out there, and one of the reasons why rum is struggled in Asia is because as a local, if you're drinking sugarcane spirits, it's going to be cheap. It's going to be very cheap. maybe some flavoring in there, so you don't associate rum with quality. You want to show that you've arrived. You drink an imported whiskey. Now you're not going to drink sugarcane spirits, but because rum is growing around the world, you're seeing some of these sugarcane, the companies that use sugarcane and make sugarcane say, "Well, why don't we make our own version of that out there, and let's see if we can make a little more money on that." So you're going to start to see a lot more quality sugarcane distillates that will now be called rum, because they weren't called rum before. On the international market from areas where you wouldn't expect a rum culture, let alone rum brands coming from there.
Yeah, I speaking like on the whole global nature of everything, I think most rum lovers don't necessarily get the chance to experience so many other parts of the world so often. And when we do, it's a short trip or something. Maybe you're attending a festival, whatever. You've kind of traveled the world on behalf of rum, engaging with different regions, working with different regions and stuff like
Living
that.
Living the
dream. How would you kind of characterize some like the main differences between some of the rum markets, whether it's US versus EU, Asian market, or what are like the biggest differences to you in terms of how rum is perceived around the world?
Yeah. Well, a little bit of the answer to that is the previous answer in regards to some areas just not respecting or being a little bit complacent of the fact that this noble spirit or this potential noble spirit is made from the most common raw material, spirit raw material in your region. So if sugarcane is in abundance, it means it's going to be used for pretty much every single alcohol out there. You're making brandy, you make it with sugarcane. You're making gin, you make it with sugarcane. You're making rum. Well, what's rum? That's what they drink in the gap. Yeah, we'll make it with sugarcane. Make it whiskey from sugarcane. So you go to any of the lot of regions, especially in places like Asia, they're making lots of local spirits from sugarcane. The world's biggest gin, 35 million cases, is made from sugarcane. A product called San Miguel Ginebra in the Philippines. And the Philippines has a lot of sugarcane. In fact, their biggest selling brandy is made from sugarcane. About 12 million. So sugarcane,
biggest selling rum in the world.
Yeah, there you go. Tanduay. Yeah. So they look at sugarcane spirits or sugarcane distillates as local and not quality as such. So that's always going to be a challenge for the perception of quality rums being sold in those areas. And we had a bit of that, and still to a little bit to an extent, but not as much. But we still have a bit of that in the Caribbean, where we disrespected our own local rums when we compared them to Scotch whiskies or stuff imported as such. It's only now we're looking at what other people are saying. These guys are drinking our rum, and they're saying it's better than the whiskey that we normally drink. Why is that? That's our rum. So it's coming back. So the perception. But
you're saying that's because of availability, or is it like familiarity breeds contempt type of thing?
Correct. Familiarity breeds contempt. That's all it is. Not availability, because it was available. But why would you sell? Why would you, if your biggest market, your biggest drinker drinks a white rum, unaged, 63% alcohol by volume, 12 billion bottles a year? Why would you get that same rum and stick it in a barrel and let it wait for 10 years? And the Duppies or the Angels taking their share and then sell it to those same people. You could have sold that rum 10 times over as an unaged rum. Now, if some of that rum was going abroad in smaller quantities to an audience that was used to drinking Scotch whiskies or brandies and things like that, then that's where you're making money. So a lot of these rums were exported. These aged rums were exported, and that's where the perceived quality came from abroad, where locals are drinking young, white, strong cane spirits. As such. So, and then when you grew up drinking that, you're like, you know what? I'm tired of rum. I grew up drinking that for many years. My granddad drank that. My dad drank that. I want to drink something else. I'm drinking vodka. I'm going to drink Scotch whiskey. I'm going to drink brandy. So familiarity 100% breeds contempt. So it's about perception in the area. Asia, perception of rum, imported rums, is not as high as what it could be, as good as what it could be. But there's a lot of potential there. In the Africa continent, again, that familiarity breeds contempt. A lot of sugarcane growing there, but brandy, whiskey are just king. Caribbean now starting to respect their own products. And we'll drink loads of local rums as well as now imported rums and some of the premium stuff as well. And in Europe, we've never had much sugarcane grown in Europe. We drink all the good stuff that comes over here and we know about it first. And the same as in North America. Would love to see North America get back to how it was maybe 300 years ago, where everyone was drinking like 50 gallons of rum per person.
Exactly. Yeah.
George Washington.
We're trying to do our part one podcast at a time.
I see.
We are.
So yeah, the potential of North America is great because you guys are drinking that substitute to rum, which was whiskey. So we get back to that aged spirit flavor, beautiful complexity that's appreciated, and get that intrinsic value back to where it should be. Then North America has a lot of potential when it comes to premium rums. Definitely premium rums.
Well, I talk to at least one bourbon or whiskey drinker a week that I'm slowly winning over to rum. So
I can imagine, especially down in Tennessee. It's
it's bourbon. It's bourbon country, Tennessee whiskey country. And it's a smooth transition for a lot of people. I mean, John got into rum coming from bourbon, and was attracted to it because bourbon was getting so insane in terms of.
And I did the other way. I got into really appreciating bourbons through rum. And of course Scotch whiskey as well. I appreciate Scotch whiskey through rums.
100%.
So it's very easy to make that transition. It's just that I'll never drink as much whiskey as rum.
Same.
But I appreciate it.
I can appreciate it and enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But rum is got the top spot for life.
Yeah. So, Ian, most people think of you and your name now as synonymous with rum, which I think is obviously a testament to the job that you've done over the years, building your reputation and recognition. But I don't think too many people know that you also had a background in professional basketball. You've been a recording artist and music. And I know that's
dubious, the music part.
I don't think so. I mean, we've seen some videos.
There's
on
a YouTube video.
So
there's a YouTube video out there. We've seen it. So one of the questions we were thinking to ask was, I know that there's a tendency for people sometimes to begin to see people who they associate with a particular thing as sort of just that one thing. So like sometimes people might see you as that rum guy.
Just the rum guy.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about that in that way? And how does that affect you? And have you thought about that in a way of saying like, no, I'm more than that? Or are you good with being that rum guy?
I'm 100% good at being just that rum guy. I've gone through life, especially in my early adult career, of just appreciating what I have in front of me, trying to do the best I can be for anything I put my mind to. I try to do the best I can, and I've been very, very fortunate to have wore quite a few hats. As you said, I love playing basketball, so I played for my country. Just that the professional basketball scene in the UK wasn't enough to sustain a living, because we're not as professional as you guys in the States.
Even as an MVP.
100, see? Correct. Yeah, MVP in an All-Star game.
I came across a quote that was just like amazing to me about your time, playing basketball professionally, and what you just said about wanting to be the best at everything. And you talked about you would pay to play because you believed in your ability, that you would maximize the opportunity. And I thought that was inspiring.
And so when you're doing that, you're doing it just for the love. But when you're looking at your future, you say, well, I'm giving up all this time. Because while I was playing professional basketball, I was still bartending as well. Wow. And I enjoyed the bartending and having fun. I was also doing my music career at the same time, which was doing a gig here, doing a gig here. So I was doing all of those things, just having fun. Whatever came my way, I just said, I'll do that. Let's do it. But it got to a stage where, why am I paying for this when these two other jobs are actually paying me for doing that? So I should be just playing basketball just for fun, not really dedicating all that time to training and being part of the team and driving. Round trips just to train would have been like 40 miles for a round trip. So I gave it up. I gave up the basketball, just did it as just for recreational purposes, just to keep in shape, and then focused on the real career, which was cocktails, rum, bartending, and a little bit of the music. But as I said, when I put my mind to something, I try to do it, try to give it 100%, even higher than that, and try to do it to the best of my abilities. But one thing I realized you do need to be successful is hunger. And I knew that after certain things happened with basketball, I lost that hunger, just like I lost the hunger for the music career. I've never lost the hunger for cocktails and rum. I'm still hungry.
Well, that's evident for sure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, still hungry, and still thirsty.
Yeah, and another thing that I've noticed in the few times we got to see you in person at Miami Rum Congress last year, hoping that we can do that again at some point in the future. You have often referred to yourself as an edutainer.
Yes,
which
right.
is a great way to explain, I think, what you do and what you offer. But I guess I was wondering, does the blend of how much education versus entertainer you are change greatly with what the event is? Or is there sort of like a static
scale?
blend? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Is it close to a 50-50 split? How do you view that?
It's always, 100%. It's always a sliding scale. You always have to read your audience and read the event and the situation you're in, because there are certain types of jokes or certain types of ways of presenting that may work in one field and one audience, one arena, and won't work in others. So you have to tailor make it to the audience. So it's a bit of research on who the audience is, where you are, and the actual event. So it's sliding. Sometimes I could just be a stand-up comedian. Some of my favorite entertainers and presenters are all stand-up comedians, and I'll use some of their material and adapt it to my own, or as well as bringing my own life stories and give that presentation. And I walk off stage and I've educated everyone there about the whole rum industry without them even knowing.
Exactly.
What can you name one or two of your favorite comedians that you've kind of you've taken some inspiration from?
I suppose this came up quite recently in a survey. So Eddie Murphy. Love Eddie Murphy. I nearly died watching one of his shows when I was younger. I was watching Delirious, and I nearly died because I nearly choked on a chicken bone at a barbecue. On an American airbase in Alconbury in Oxfordshire in the UK. My mum used to date an American soldier, so a GI. So I was watching the show. I was laughing so hard and choking at this dry chicken. I had to pat me on my back to cough out. Eddie Murphy nearly killed me because it was.
I'm glad that you survived. Yeah, Rum is glad that you survived.
Much better for it.
Delirious.
But I love Richard Pryor, some of the old school guys. Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy.
Legends.
Today we've got Dave Chappelle as well. I love clever comedians that really challenge the narrative, challenge people, and also have lots of layered jokes that will go over a lot of people's head that you're like, oh wow, that's quite funny. So clever little jokes. So I love those, love that type of comedy, and I love laughing at myself. I think it's important that you have to laugh at yourself as a comedian, as a presenter. Be humble in that respect, because again, people won't remember as much about what you say, but they'll 100% remember how you made them feel.
Right.
When I do a presentation about rum, I want people to walk away and say, yeah, that guy was funny. He was great. I love the way you talked about Solera barrel aging, and he used people as barrels, and there's lots of sexual connotations and that. And then you're like, really? And then you say to him, so can you tell me how Solera system works? Yeah. You just get one barrel here, and you empty out some of your juice into one, and then you empty out another juice into another. And I'm like, there you go. You remember
You got it. Yeah.
Bingo.
I didn't want to go technical. If I'd have gone technical, you'd been like way over my head. But
right.
You make it applicable as long as you're getting your point across. So for me, it's using entertainment as a way of educating people, hence edutainment.
Well, we have a little bit of edutainment we try to do at the end of every episode to give people opportunity to get to know our guests on maybe a little kind of fun level.
Nice.
We call it the rapid fire round. So it's just a series of rapid fire questions. Yeah. John always comes up with these in advance. Sometimes I look at them, sometimes I don't. So they're left to his imagination. I know you guys are both dads, so you're familiar with the idea of dad jokes.
That's right. Yeah.
John is great with the dad jokes. So basically what we do is we put 60 seconds on the clock, and then we try to get through as many questions as possible. It's optional. We position this as an optional segment. Everyone always does it. But so if you're up for the challenge.
I'm up for the challenge.
Oh, God. Just talking about Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy now before doing this is like, oh, my goodness, this is going to be the worst ever. All right, we're going to do it anyway, though. We're going to run through.
Hope this is over 21.
All right, I've got 60 seconds on the clock, and go.
All right, neat or on the rocks?
Neat.
All right, column, pot, or blend?
Blend.
Molasses, cane juice, or cane syrup?
Ooh. Are you talking about on our body? No, molasses.
All right. I have literally never seen you without a hat on. Be honest. How many hats do you own now?
I have, if you're talking about my fedoras and Panama type hats, I have 19. I counted them like 3 weeks ago.
What country in the world makes the best rum?
Oh, I would like to say Jamaica. No,
I figured that was coming.
The country I'm in.
Oh. The country you're in. That's a better answer.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I'm going to borrow that. Are you willing to say which Jamaican rum is your current favorite?
Oh, Ray and Nephew Overproof. First rum I drunk, but the last rum I'll ever drink.
Recognizing the shared acronym, the International Space Station is asked to be the host location for the next ISS Rum Awards presentation. You've drunk rum in Antarctica. Is space next?
Oh, 100%. Hey, did you know that what's called in deep space, the flavor of deep space is raspberry and rum? That's a fact.
No, I did
I've
not
heard
know
that
that
before.
but
I've heard that.
Excellent. Your favorite person to share a bottle of rum with, but you can't say Richard.
I was about to say Richard. If it's not Richard Seale, it'd have to be Gail Seale, because Richard will be sitting next to him.
Oh, that's a good one. Good
nice,
one.
nice.
All right. You made a hit record under the pseudonym The Dude in the 2000s. Can we expect another release from The Dude anytime soon?
Only if I get really drunk and I'll be filming another video down in Miami like we did back in 2002.
Let me know. We'll be there. I could be in the background. I got a background. I'll be the hype man. Michael Jordan had the fadeaway. Allen Iverson had the crossover. Steph Curry has the pull-up three. Yeah. During your professional basketball days, what was your unguardable skill that struck fear into the hearts of your opponents?
Oh, it was give me that quick step to my right.
Nice.
The quick step.
If I could take
two steps to the right,
if I took two steps, no, I'm dunking on you.
Oh, dunking! You can dunk.
Man. Oh yeah, it was fearless.
Love it. That is time.
All right.
When was the last time you dunked?
Oh, that's a better question. Oh, shit.
This is the bonus round.
Well, while you're thinking, I can tell you the last time I dunked was never.
It's going to be about 10 years ago, probably.
Wow.
I haven't stretched enough for it. And that was outdoor courts. That concrete is not as forgiving as like a nice, soft wooden floor.
Yeah.
Well, you've given us a slam dunk for rum.
Oh,
so
wow.
There's that.
Wow.
You see the dad joke, Will?
Yeah,
I couldn't pass it up there. I just couldn't pass it up.
No, seriously, thank you, Ian, for taking the time to hang out with us. Before we go, anything else? I know you kind of hinted a little bit on the Equiano front.
Yeah.
You said this is the first blend. So is there anything else to let people know about before we call it a day?
Well, so later on this year, we will be launching our second SKU. And that was supposed to be, it still is, supposed to be more for the on-premise. It's a rum made for bartenders that want to use a really good blend, a good light rum for some lighter styles of rum cocktails. So it's a blend of 3-year-old Foursquare rums with some fresh sugarcane juice from Mauritius. Molasses and agricole. It's got a little bit of earthiness with the agricole, and of course that roundness of the hints of vanilla and natural sweetness, but a lot drier than original Equiano because it is a lighter rum. Color-wise, imagine a reposado for tequila. So it's straw looking color.
Almost kind of like the Probitas Veritas kind of color.
Correct. Oh yeah, I should have said that. Yeah, I don't know why. Yes, exactly. Same color as Probitas and Veritas. The difference is, of course, Probitas Veritas is 47 and we're 43. We're stuck at the 43. Again, just for to be a little bit more versatile for the up and coming bartender, for the so-called mixologist, or even the home bartender as well. But the fact that we again using a blend of rums from Africa and the Caribbean is part of our Equiano DNA. So that'll be the new one coming out this year. And then later on, towards the end of the year, we'll be doing our first vintage or cask strength, which me and Richard are trying to work out what we're going to do, either vintage or cask strength. But we got some great vintages from Mauritius that are on the way to Barbados that he'll mix with some vintage. Foursquare, and we'll do a limited edition.
Now you're talking my language here. Actually, I like both of them, but yeah.
Brilliant. So we're going to be in lots of limited edition rums that I would love to see some of the other brands do, but now I have the opportunity to do this with Equiano. And Richard has given us like full carte blanche to actually use some of his products.
That's really cool.
Like this. So that's
can't wait.
That's what we got planned.
Yeah, we will be keeping an eager eye towards all of that. But yeah, thank you so much again for taking the time to join us.
Thanks, Ian.
It's always a pleasure to get to be edutained by the master of it. So we appreciate it, and hope you had a good time.
No, I had a great time, man. It's great seeing you guys, and I wish I was there having a drink with you. But we'll have to
eventually. We'll get there.
We're gonna make that happen someday. That's right.
Yeah, well, I'll save that to when I'm down in Florida, since that's the only state that's open.
Yeah.
and that's going to be our I wouldn't say a test market, but that's where we're going to be focusing a lot of our energy with Equiano in Florida. So we have the importers, distributors, and we're working with a couple of companies there. We have a brand ambassador down there as well. So
cool.
So we're going to be doing a lot of work in Florida.
Well, you got the Florida Rum Society, and you know,
John's the Florida guy to talk to down there.
Yep.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be
Jay
doing a lot of work
and Ian are good buddies, and we are looking forward to doing whatever we can to get that Equiano out there. We really appreciate it and enjoy it. Yep.
Excellent. Yep, looking forward to it. And of course, I'll be up in Tennessee as well.
Oh, wait, when are you coming here?
I'm going to be doing seeing my friends from Uncle Nearest.
Oh, awesome! I've been wanting to take a visit out to Uncle Nearest, but with COVID and everything, I just haven't had the chance. But amazing, another brand with an amazing story, just like you were talking about. That's really cool.
What they're doing, because they're building the distillery, getting the stills in there. So looking forward to when they start banging out some juice as well to see. But I mean, the liquid they have at the moment, I think it might be come from Dickles. Is it Dickles?
I think that's right. I think so.
Probably. Again, when you got Nicole Austin possible doing that down there, and she's one of the best when it comes to making whiskies. So I'm looking forward to going out there, because in the future there will be some exciting news, exciting announcements to make connecting Tennessee and Uncle Nearest and Equiano. As well.
Wow!
So, yeah.
As a Tennessean, I get rum related news very rarely that's happening here, so that's very exciting to me. I will be watching out for that for sure.
As soon as everything's confirmed, you'll be one of the first to know.
Excellent. I appreciate it. Great, Ian. Well, thank you again. And
thank you. Thanks again for your time. Thanks again for your time. Yeah.
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Rumcast with Ian Burrell. I definitely encourage you to go to the Equiano website. It's a beautiful website. I don't know if you noticed that, John, but if you go to the Equiano website, it's very nice. Check out what's coming from them. Get that latest release. Look forward to those additional releases coming that Ian hinted at. I'm excited about those.
Yeah, and also we'll put the show notes, the ISS Awards. We make sure we put that in the show notes and get that information for you. Really, really great stuff and some interesting stuff there in terms of what medaled and
check out the full results.
For sure. It was a really cool thing to read over and to hear from Ian on it and how that was done. So now you get to see, now that you have the insight, you can see how that worked out into
right.
the
You've heard the process. Now you can see the results. It's definitely cool. And speaking of good websites, their website is very nice too. It's very easy to kind of like see who won what, the ratings and everything, the philosophy behind their scoring system. I found very helpful in terms of being able to interpret the ratings and things like that. So definitely check it out. And while you're doing that, you can also head on over to Apple Podcasts. Find the Rumcast on there. Leave us a review. We always love those. It helps more people find the podcast as well, which is good. As always, if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, feel free to hit us up on social media or email us, host@rumcast.com. host@rumcast.com. Where are we on social media, John? You're the social media maven of our little rum empire over here. Where are we?
The social guru. We're on Facebook and Instagram. So we do post on Twitter, but we really don't interact on Twitter. So yeah, Facebook, it's Rumcast on Facebook, or you can find us on Instagram. We do a lot on there. And we like to do a little bit through there of interactivity. We're starting to push a little bit more interactivity through some of our posts. So if you want to tell us who you think should be in the Rum Vengers, we've been doing that post. Definitely hit us up. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you want us to keep talking to. We love hearing the feedback. It keeps us going. So please reach out to us there.
All right. With that said, we'll talk to you next time.